Hello, I'm Reynard Boyce, the owner of Temple Mortgage, LLC. Today, I'm going to speak specifically as to why one would want to choose Temple Mortgage when trying to finance or refinance a VA loan. Just a little bit of background. We've been in business since 1996, and we have serviced the Greater Peninsula and Tidewater for the last 30 years. In 2014, we began to specialize in VA loans, and at this point, I would consider myself a VA mortgage lending expert. So, without belaboring the point, let's delve in. Why would one choose Temple Mortgage as opposed to other mortgage companies? Certainly, all mortgage companies are created equal, right? Absolutely not. So many mortgage companies in today's time, especially after the 2018 mortgage meltdown, and again after COVID, have become increasingly far more rigid. What does that mean? It means that numerous veterans who would otherwise be deserving and are deserving of a home are being denied. Now, let's talk about why veterans are being denied and what Temple Mortgage has been able to do successfully since 2014 to turn many denials into loan approvals. Here are a few key captions or items or points of interest regarding us. The first thing I like to say is that we treat our veterans as clients, as persons. It may seem simple, but that is huge. So many lenders and so many real estate agents treat the veteran as a commission, as a paycheck. By virtue of the fact that we have closed veterans with no score, we've closed veterans who have been injured, had low scores, medical bills from Champas that Champas had not paid or were being ill-reported on their credit report, veterans who are suffering from PTSD, 100% disabled veterans, wounded warriors, Purple Hearts. We have had a gamut of veterans that we've been able to serve. And in 2014, I guess as a test of our dedication, we started with the most challenging credit challenge clients relative to VA that anyone could find. And we successfully closed overwhelmingly 90% of those veterans that came to us. So what makes us different? How are we able to close VA loans that other persons could not? Why should you, the gentlemen and ladies who are watching this podcast, choose Temple Mortgage as opposed to any other lender? Well, let me say this. Anyone can do an easy loan. Anyone can do a loan for a veteran with a 670 score, no lates, no judgments, no collections, no blemishes, 670 and above. You know, the picture perfect client. The typical bank client, the type of client that banks seem to welcome with open arms. But what happens to the vet that has challenges? What happens to the vet that has a collection? What happens to a vet that may have had a late payment here or there? What happened to a vet who may have bounced some checks along the way? What happens to persons who have had life challenges? And we all know that life does and will happen. And if it has not happened, it will certainly happen to you eventually. And with regard to veterans, many have credit challenges simply because of the nature of the injuries that some of them have sustained, being deployed, not having the financial mechanism to make sure that all bills or debts are paid on time while they have been deployed. Sometimes veterans have had their cars repossessed, credit cards, charged off, where creditors and banks and lenders have not been respectful of the Soldiers and Sailors Relief Act, which gives specific relief to veterans if they're deployed or in wartime. It gives them a type of cover or haven protection from having a credit ruin. Most banks, most lenders, most institutions do not adhere to that. Therefore, we have this periphery of vets that come to us often, and they're denied. Well, why are they denied? Well, let's speak to a specific situation, one example that comes to mind, especially since I'm talking to some of you gentlemen right now in Richmond, some of you who may be at that Fort Lee base or surrounding military bases. There's a bank or credit union across the street from Fort Lee Credit Union. And let me add, this is a true story. And in 2017, I had the pleasure of being contacted to originate a loan for a decorated officer, retired, of the United States Army, who was denied. He called me frantically and his wife stating that this was the day of their closing and it did not occur. Well, what's so egregious about that? They had their belongings on trucks. Their furnishings, their everything were on trucks and the engines were running. And the manager of Fort Lee Federal Credit Union, Savings Credit Union, would not pick up the phone. She didn't tell them why they were denied. She didn't even tell them that they were not denied, but she did not pick up the phone. The seller was calling frantically. So everyone was in an uproar, and here is this gentleman who had given up his domicile, had paid to have lights and gas cut on, had paid thousands of dollars in moving trucks and expenses and moving persons, only to be so outrageously mistreated, to be slapped in the face by an institution that calls itself Fort Lee Federal Credit Union. Now, is that not an oxymoron within itself? We were contacted, and I would like to say that in 15 days, we were able to close that loan. 15 days from the time we were called, and the lender, the previous lender, had over 45 days and waited till the day of to tell this family of 5 that they would not be closing. Mother, father, daughters, grandchildren, all waiting to take possession of their beautiful home in Chesterfield, Virginia, and they would not be able to move in on that day. How were we able to turn it around? Well, the first thing we had to figure out was, why was the loan being denied? And it was something as simple as he had a child support collection of $50,000. It was over 10 years old. And from his retirement, there was a payment of $100 a month being made every month for the last 10 years, since the inception of the debt. And all we needed was proof of that, the payment history. And because of the age of the debt was not collectible. The debt was collectible, but you could not count it as a current or active judgment against him. And all we needed was proof, and we were able to close the loan. Something as simple as that. Now, how were you able to maneuver around it? Well, that leads me to part 2 of this lecture. Many lenders try to underwrite a VA loan as they do a Fannie Mae loan. In other words, they want all loans to look alike. That's not the case. VA loans have a nuance and an underwriting disposition all into themselves. But what most banking institutions want is they want cookie cutter loans. They want VA, FHA, and Fannie Mae to all look alike. And that's not the case. I can appreciate in a Fannie Mae situation that Fannie, depending on the underwriter, may not have wanted to close a loan with a $50,000 child support obligation. But I can also see that for the last 10 years, he was paying arrears, because the $50,000 was not current support, it was arrears, and the children were at this point adults. Therefore, that leads to this point. You have to underwrite a VA loan as a VA loan and not as a Fannie Mae loan or Freddie Mac loan or an FHA loan. Simply put, we don't count medical collections. Many lenders do. We do not count an auto repossession if it's over 1 year old and under $7,500. We don't count most collections if they're a year old. We do not have a VA does not have a mandatory credit requirement. Look in the manual, you won't find one. But many lenders try to impose credit requirements or credit score requirements, better put, in order to facilitate the loan, because they have their own individual internal lending criteria. It has nothing to do with VA guidelines. It has nothing to do with VA's ability to fund that loan. But that leads to another nuance in underwriting. The VA guarantees the loan, but the lender underwrites the loan and lends on the loan. The loan may be backed by VA, but at the end of the day, it is the lender that cuts the check. And therefore, they are able to impose what we call overlays. Simply put, here's the VA underwriting guideline. Here are their rules and regulations by which a VA loan should be underwritten. The lender takes their rules, lays it over VA's guidelines, basically blanketing them, making them nullifying them, and says, no, we will only underwrite or approve this loan under our set of underwriting conditions. Now, can you see the rub? Can you see the huge problem with that? that the VA has the most flexible underwriting guidelines, and yet lenders turn around and impose the most rigid underwriting guidelines, basically Fannie Mae in nature, which makes it even more difficult for the veteran to achieve his or her goal of home ownership. This happens every day. Now, here's another reason that many veterans are denied. And we'll pivot in this section to the real estate market, or to the real estate agents and brokerages more specifically. The simple matter is many brokers, I guess there's no ginger way to say this, many brokers are in the bed with many lending institutions. They have a type of relationship, some of which I question the ethical or the efficacy of it. Is it ethical that in exchange for this lender, or sometimes it's more than one, or two or three in one office of a big real estate company, you may walk through the door and you'll turn to the right and you'll see three different lenders: Movement Mortgage, OVM Mortgage, and the like. And it's a you understood situation that the agents are expected to send their business to one of those lenders, one of the three. That's whom they choose, from whom they choose. Now, how is it that these lenders have presence in these offices? Many times they're paying the rent. They'll pay a contribution toward the rent. So now the real estate company is operating rent free. Secondly, they will give them leads in exchange for the realtors or real estate agents bringing their business exclusively to one of those three. Now, I'm not an attorney. I don't pretend to practice law. I do know the laws of lending, however. I do know the laws imposed by the State Corporations Commission. And in my limited experience as a country boy, I would have to say that sounds like a kickback to me. A rose is still a rose under any other name. And because of this relationship between the real estate company and the mortgage company, the clients, and in this case specifically the veteran, is not given the greatest opportunity to be granted home ownership. He is being disavowed and denied because of the relationship, a financial relationship between the real estate company and the mortgage company. They won't let companies like Temple Mortgage through the door. They will meet you at the door. And at the end of the day, it is the veteran who's suffering. We are able to do loans for veterans currently down to a 585 score, in some instances 550. We at one time were able to do them down to a 500 score. Note, we can still do a refinance down to a 500 score. There's a new rule imposed by VA, which is exciting, new guideline rather, that if you've been on time for the last 12 months, just 12 months of clean credit, you can buy a home. 12 months of clean credit versus other lenders requiring 3 to 4 years, which once again is a Fannie Mae style regulation. Fannie Mae. Now let's pivot back to the agents again. So the veteran comes through the door. Oftentimes the veteran, the borrower, is admonished to get their credit score up, to spend thousands of dollars trying to pay off judgments and collections. They're steered to some credit collection agency or credit repair rather agency that's often not licensed, or they'll go to some law firm that is on the internet, these ones that promise they'll get your score, and they promise they can take things off your credit, which is not true, because guess what? A judgment has already done the damage it's going to do. And since we don't count collections, why are veterans being forced and admonished to pay off debts, spending precious savings that could be better used for their families to pay off debts in a misguided effort in order to get their credit score up, only to be denied? So now they've spent their reserves, they spent their savings, only to come back to that same lender and say, sorry, your score isn't high enough, and or you don't have enough savings. See, this is a travesty. And I know these things because I experienced them, because I have these same veterans that have come to me and we've been able to turn it around. So gentlemen, ladies who are viewing this video, I won't belabor this point much longer, but I will say these are just a few of the reasons that anyone, any veteran especially, should be excited at the opportunity to come to Temple Mortgage, because we care about our clients. We work zealously for our clients. It is not only a business, it is a ministry for me. We have ministered to veterans since 2014. I've been in business since 1996. And in 14, we turned this into a significant part of our business practice. Veterans deserve home ownership. Veterans deserve home ownership. And it is not in keeping with the credo that we espouse, that we cherish our vets. We call them our national treasure, our greatest treasure. And yet, in terms of home ownership, we deny them overwhelmingly. That ought not be so. In closing, every honorably discharged vet has a piece of paper, a significant, powerful piece of paper, that entitles them to home ownership. It is called a certificate of eligibility. And it is my goal, my endeavor, my quest, my desire that every one of you that has a certificate of eligibility in his or her possession, that we put it to good use, and not give back billions in unused funds, which have been rightfully earned on your behalf. You have bled, you have died, you have been wounded, you have lost limb, you have lost family, you've lost sanity, you've lost hope, you've lost many things. But if there's something we can do to reinstill your faith and your hope in this system, then it is my quest to do so. I thank you for listening. I'm Reynard Boyce, the owner of Temple Mortgage, LLC, license number 218997, here in Norfolk, Virginia, practicing in this great Commonwealth of Virginia, endeavoring to help many veterans obtain their goals. Thank you for listening. If you need to reach me, you can reach me at 757-567-6700, 757-567-6700. Check out my website, www.templemortgagellc.com. You can email me at Reynard, REYNARD, BOYCE @gmail.com. Thank you all. Be blessed.